Hi, welcome to my session at SCOM 2025. So happy to be here again. Sounds like the intro of Eurovision Song Festival. But again, thanks all for joining this session. This session will be similar to the ones I gave a couple of years ago, but it's still relevant because this session is based on a lot of questions I get in the community, but also from companies, just asking me whether SCOM is still relevant. So I wanted to, pinpoint or give you some highlights or at least warn you for those pitfalls and make sure that you can still use SCOM and still have the best tool, the best place to work with. So session for today is SCOM versus the future and how it actually fits into the modern IT monitoring. First, a little bit about myself. My name is Dieter Wijckmans. I'm based in Belgium. I try to get my best picture on there. In the middle is a hobby of mine. I try to keep Beetlepuck on the roads to cruise with my family. I still have time for that between 3 and 5 a.m. in the morning, so that's fine. I'm a managing consultant at Obvious. We founded, I think, almost 10 years ago. Time flies, where we deliver services to large customers regarding workplace, also Azure governance, and also SCOM, to be honest. I've included my email as well. So if you have questions during or after this session, if you see the recording or whatever, and if you just want to discuss or you have an opinion on opinions I have or whatever, feel free to shoot me a mail and I will always be happy to jump into a Teams call and discuss. Our website is on there as well, www.obvious.be. And I'm also a Microsoft MVP, Cloud and Data Center Management since 2014, and since last year also on Azure Hybrid and Migration, where SCOM also plays a role, which is quite fantastic to see. I've included my Twitter handle as well. I'm not that active anymore on Twitter, but again, I'm not that good at hiding online, so if you can spell my name, you can actually see and you can find me and you can actually connect with me. So first things first, I always try to start with a quote, and I'm still working in the monitoring space, I think now for over 10 years, I think. And it's one of the key things I always say to customers, if you can't measure it, you can't change it. Meaning monitoring is key to actually see what's going on in your environment. And if at one point it's in your environment and you start working with it, you actually have the possibility to move forward on that. The agenda for today is quite easy. What are the challenges in modern IT monitoring? Which is a lot because we came from a huge, let's say, standstill where it was a nice cadence between Windows Server and versioning to a cadence which is almost impossible to keep up with. So tools like SCOM or other tools also need to keep up with the ever-changing modern IT world and the modern IT monitoring, of course. The do's and don'ts with SCOM, just some tips I've had from my personal experience. And afterwards, we're going into the next evolution in monitoring, and then we're going to talk hybrid monitoring strategies, because I emphasized here the word strategies, because in fact, you need to make sure that you have a strategy to keep SCOM in your environment relevant. And it is still relevant today. Just a side note, I think when I started working with SCOM, there were already people telling me that it was a tool that's probably gonna go away pretty soon, but it's still here and it's still relevant. That's pretty cool to see. The SCOM team still is involved, or is still evolving a lot and making sure that the tool stays relevant. And from my point of view, it's always nice to see days like this, because SCOM itself, I still see new customers creating new installations, hybrid ones or whatever, but it's still relevant, and that's pretty cool. And last but not least, of course, we have some key takeaways that I can arm you with some tips and tricks to make sure that you have the right tools to have the right monitoring scenario. So first of all, a bit awareness. Awareness is a big word, but I want to make sure that you ask yourself. I've seen a lot of people trying to get into, let's say, SCOM projects and then suddenly get overwhelmed. So one of the key things I really want to show you is the fact that ask yourself, are you sure which tools are in your environment? Because if you didn't implement SCOM the right way, or it's not the right fit for a specific monitoring scenario, from time to time, new tools are introduced in a bit of a shadow IT purpose. And at that point, you need to make sure that you have full control over those tools and that you can use it in your monitoring strategy or your monitoring scenarios. So what monitoring tools are you exploring? It's always a good thing to look over the fence, meaning that you look over the fence and that you can find other tools or tools which are probably a better fit. I did a lot of these sessions, and one of the key things I always try to transmit or at least tell people is the fact that there's almost certainly not one monitoring tool to rule them all. Every monitoring tool has their merits and their flaws. So in the end, make sure that you have the right tool for the job, and that you, if you start evaluating tools, that you're not, well, caught in a tunnel vision. For example, we will see during this session that SCOM excels in a lot of things, but has also some, let's say, things where it less excels, but still has the possibility to do something, but other tools have a better thing. So if at one point you want to start your monitoring strategy, make sure that at least you have the right tools to start working with your monitoring strategy, specifically for this customer. If you are in the consultancy space like I am, it's in the beginning very hard to, let's say, not fall into the pitfall of just recreating every environment itself and then just doing everything the same like you did in the last environment, because every environment is different and every company has different processes and whatever. Again, if you have questions, feel free to email and or ask me. It's not a in-person event, but still, I'm not that good at hiring online. So if you can find me, or if you can spell my name, you can find me. Connect on LinkedIn, all the other various platforms. And I hope to see you actually at an in-person event really soon. So the first part of this session, people who've seen some of my sessions know that I like to, well, do it in parts. So the first thing I want to show you is the challenges. What are the challenges in modern ICT monitoring? Again, from my personal standpoint, from my personal experience, I'm seeing a lot of customers which have challenges, and some of those challenges are proven so big that at one point they think that it's unsolvable with SCOM, while it's just an issue with processes or whatever. So the first thing I mentioned already is the shifting landscape of IT or ICT. It used to be very easy, meaning you had Windows Server 2000, then you had Windows Server next version, next version, next version. And every next version had also a cadence of the System Center tools which were updated, and you had the possibility to update quite in a phase or in a project. So it was quite easy, and it was quite, well, easy to oversee. At one point, Linux came into play and other OS came into play, but it was still on-prem. After that came Hyper-V, which was still manageable by SCOM, but now you get a rapid cloud adoption, meaning you don't have to go through a full project to set something up. And a lot of customers are seeing, if they don't have proper, let's say, governance or guidance, that at one point people are spinning up things in Azure and that they need to be monitored, but monitoring is not always the first thing they come and ask. They just want to have it working, and if it fails, they say, okay, why wasn't it monitored? That happens all the time. So the rapid cloud adoption is one thing that SCOM really needs to, well, that you need to be aware of. Like I said, new technologies emerge at an incredible speed. It used to be easy when you needed a DBase, you used SQL, but now you have like a variety of different DBases, which are combinations of different things. DevOps and CI/CD are the norm, meaning a lot of companies now have embraced the agile DevOps CI/CD environments or the way of working. Which is a good thing because then you have like sprints and everything. So a lot of us engineers had to become also small software deployers or whatever. So that's a good thing. It's structured, but of course you need to make sure that the tool you're using also is, well, at least supporting that structure. Containers, microservices on the rise, meaning it used to be easy because, well, server was at one point treated as cattle, meaning that it was nourished, that it was treated, that everybody knew what was going on. Now it's more of a consumable asset, meaning that a container and a microservice at one point can be easily spun up and then discarded off. So it's very, well, hard from a monitoring tools perspective to actually grasp all this and then start monitoring it. Hybrid environments dominate large enterprises. Remind me that hybrid environments, because hybrid will be a word which will be the guidance between through this session, because at one point Microsoft started with a cloud-first strategy or cloud-only strategy, and then it evolved into a private cloud, and now we are most of the time in the large enterprises in a hybrid environment. So this is a slide which I really wanted to get in because I still have a love-hate relationship with SCOM, but where SCOM really still shines, and that's really one of the key things why I always tell people to start using SCOM, is the fact that it still has the deep integration with Windows and Active Directory. So on-prem, you install the agent and you have the possibility, if you get over the hurdle of installation and the learning curve, we've all been there. If at one point, you see those integrations with Windows Server and Active Directory, you know that this tool has been built on a lot of experience, a lot of ground up experience from the ground up to make sure that it's working. Because of that deep integration, it has a strong on-prem monitoring capabilities. It really shines in the on-prem monitoring of your assets, servers, and whatever. And of course, in compliance-driven environments like healthcare and banking, where there's probably no external connections allowed to the cloud or whatever, this tool really can operate, or SCOM can really operate without the possibility to connect to the internet. If you update or upgrade your management packs, of course, you will have to download them, but it will still work. It will not have, the requirement is not that you have a connection to the internet. And of course, love it or hate it, extensive use of management packs. As soon as you get the hang of the management packs, there are a lot of customizable things you can do with SCOM that I've did in the past as well, that are sometimes not possible with other tools. So what are the challenges with SCOM in modern IT? So challenges are there, of course. You have complex setup and maintenance. You can't argue with that. The first time you start with SCOM, you will actually, well, probably crash and burn. There are some good blocks out there, but sometimes time is a constraint. So in the end, I did a session, I think 2-3 years ago at SCOMathon, the top 10 mistakes while using SCOM or implementing SCOM. And well, those are still relevant. So if you search that on YouTube and you want to avoid those questions, if you're a SCOM novice or whatever, feel free to look at that recording as well, because there are some tips and tricks in there as well. There is limited cloud native application support. Again, if you take 100% of the engineering time for a monitoring tool, for example, you have to divide that 100% engineering time into things you want to add to the product. If you have a networking monitoring tool, you know that 100% of the time is going into networking. But if you want to add, for example, then memory or availability or at least some CPU thing, of course, it's a side thing you need to do. At SCOM, it's not that I'm saying that it's the same thing, but you need to divide that 100% time over all the features you have in the new Windows Server version and whatever. So it's virtually impossible to have all the cloud native application support built into SCOM, but we will see later on that there are possibilities. Of course, it's not DevOps friendly. I doubted to put this in, but the issue is you can set up a DevOps approach to your management packs, but again, it's not that easy, and it's not from the ground up, basically built for CI/CD way of working. Like the last, item says, it's difficult, it's virtually impossible to integrate with CI/CD tools. We had the .NET integrations for the management packs and everything, but a lot of those were too complicated or too far-fetched. In the beginning, we had the management pack editor, but that's also discontinued. So it's very hard for the management pack to work in a CI/CD tool. Again, if you feel that it's not that hard and you want to call me out on this, feel free to send me a mail or whatever, because I always want to learn as well, of course. Just a small comparison slide between the cloud native monitoring tools and SCOM. Cloud native monitoring tools, I'm not, let's say, limiting me to the Microsoft ones. There's Dynatrace and a lot of other tools out there as well. But just if you want to have a tool if you still have a huge on-prem environment, so you need to see it as a scale. If the main things of your environment are still on-premise, SCOM is still the best tool for on-premise, and it has the possibility for a hybrid setup. There's manual scaling and setup, and it's limited real-time analytics. Cloud native has a possibility for scalability and automation. It has a strong DevOps integration, and it has real-time and driven insights. The issue is that if you want to use a cloud-native tool like Azure Monitor to monitor your on-prem, of course, you will need to have that, data transferred from your on-prem to your, Azure Monitor or your Azure subscription. So there is some extra connectivity and whatever involved. So that was a bit of the challenges of the hybrid monitoring environment. The next phase or the next part of this session, I really want to talk about the do's and the don'ts of having SCOM in a monitoring environment. So some use cases when I really want to stick with SCOM, some are more obvious than others. But it's just to show you that sometimes I also have to convince customers to stay with SCOM. They have SCOM, but they're looking for an upgrade path, and they are a bit scared because of the investments and whatever. But you have to look at the fact that you need to make the same investments for another tool without any outcome or guarantee that you will have the outcome which is better than what you have today. So for large enterprises with complex on-prem infrastructures, different sites, failover sites, whatever, I always encourage people to still use SCOM. Of course, there are other tools out there, but you have those large enterprises mainly or mostly are built on Microsoft technologies, Microsoft Server, Hyper-V, whatever. And even if they have other, let's say, technologies in-house, it's still a good thing to actually introduce SCOM in those environments, because on-prem, you don't need to have that internet connection or whatever, because that's smoothly going to the second phase. For regulatory or compliance constraints, SCOM can work on your environment without any connections to the outside world, meaning you can have an isolated SCOM environment and start working from there. You already made heavy investments in existing management packs. There is a possibility to transfer management packs to Azure Monitor, but it's very basic, meaning if you have custom management packs for in-house applications, or you have custom management packs to support your processes, and you're already heavily invested in those, it's better to basically stick with SCOM than have that environment or that thing going on. And the transition toward hybrid monitoring is possible with your existing SCOM environment. A lot of people think that it's not, that you have to start from scratch, but you can actually extend your hybrid monitoring or your SCOM monitoring with hybrid monitoring. I will show you the 4 showcases I always tell people, the 4 ways I always tell people how you can move forward on that later in this session, that you can actually see which one could fit the best for your scenario. Use cases when to move on. Things happen as well. If at one point your environment has moved on or has rapidly changed into a more modern IT than SCOM excels in, then it's time to move on. And one of the things that I've seen, a lot of companies go to cloud native infrastructure and apps. If they start from the ground up, only using cloud native infrastructure or apps, of course, it's kind of strange to introduce SCOM to monitor those cloud native infrastructure apps, because if you live in the cloud, it's better to use a tool that also lives in the cloud. If you have a fast-paced CI/CD environment, again, SCOM doesn't excel in CI/CD, so it's better to move on at that point. If you need AI or model-driven alerting and insights, if it's really a key and if it's really necessary, of course, there are other tools who can do it better. And if you think that the cost of maintaining the SCOM infrastructure is getting too high, that's also, if you want the cost saving and you want to go into lighter monitoring or Azure Monitor monitoring or whatever, of course, you can also do that. So what is the next evolution in monitoring? So we've seen now the challenges or the challenges that ahead. We have seen, or I tried to explain you when to move on and when to use SCOM. Of course, I'm just giving you guidelines. If someone is convinced that SCOM is not the way forward, of course, you have to look into other tools. But for me, if always I go into discussion with the stakeholders or key decision makers, most of the time they are not aware of the full functionalities of SCOM. So the evolution in SCOM is, in fact, or in the monitoring world, without talking a lot about specific tools, is the fact that we are in a hybrid reality, meaning full cloud adoption is still there in large enterprises. I didn't come across a full-blown large enterprise which has completely shut off all its data centers. It was one of those things in, I think, the mid-2010s, late 2010s, that people were convinced that the cloud was just going to take over all data centers and everybody in data centers lost their jobs and whatever. But I haven't seen a large company. They downscaled their data centers, but still the full cloud adoption is still there. So hybrid monitoring is a practical approach. Hybrid monitoring saying, okay, I have my on-premise, it's getting smaller and this one is getting bigger, but I need a tool to actually monitor both. So you can combine SCOM with Azure Monitor or another tool. And Microsoft actually supports integration paths because you have the Azure Monitor SCOM management interface or the management packs or whatever. So you have a lot of things moving forward, but again, it's not possible to take a management pack of SCOM and then just dump it into Azure Monitor. There is another possibility, of course, which we're going to showcase later on. So let's talk strategy. How to move forward in this new, let's say, in this new monitoring world. It used to be easy coming in and say, okay, I want to install, we need monitoring over on-prem, then install the management servers, the SQL backend, deploy the agents, management packs, have meetings with different teams, and then move forward. Now it's different because you have teams which are in the cloud, you have teams which are on-prem, you actually have hybrid teams who are just supporting an application, and basically they don't care whether the application is hosted, whether it's on-prem or whether it's in Azure. Sometimes they even don't know where the application is hosted, if there was a failure or whatever. So we need to make sure that we have a good monitoring strategy for those new scenarios. I'm not a huge board game fanatic, but I have a love for risk. And it's also one of those things where you need to have a strategy, meaning you have a goal, and that goal needs to conquer some, let's say, continent or whatever. So you need to make sure that you have a strategy and you stick with it, and you need to adapt. From time to time, it's possible that you start a project, and on the left is the on-prem, and you have a lot of on-prem environment and connections, and then you see the shift. If you don't shift your monitoring tool also to the Azure, so you become hybrid, of course there will be another monitoring tool, and then you will have to get those two connected, and that's far more difficult in my personal experience than having two tools already connect to each other and have the hybrid environment present. So, strategies. A lot of those strategies involve the hybrid environment. So how do you get started with the hybrid monitoring, hybrid environment, whatever? First thing you can do, if at one point someone steps into your office and say, okay, we need to start monitoring the Azure environment as well, can SCOM do this? Of course. First thing you need to do is have dual homed agents, meaning, and that's for VMs or whatever, if you have a VM running in Azure and you have a VM running in on-prem, you can actually dual home agents. This has been possible for quite some time. But the cool thing is that you can dual home your agent not only for VMs, but you can also dual home it for Azure Monitor. Meaning, I hope everyone is familiar with the log analytics workspaces. If not, I can do a full session about it, because it's one thing you need to learn into the hybrid monitoring environment setup. You have the Microsoft Management Agent, and those two code bases have been set together, meaning you have the same agent used to connect to SCOM and or Azure Monitor, opening the vast majority of using Azure Monitor Insights or application insights, but also the possibility of having those log analytics workspaces filled with the data of your on-premise machines as well. So it's opening the capabilities of sending data simultaneously, and it's also creating a smooth, non-intrusive transition or a POC phase, as long as you don't take actions on the machine or the service itself based on the monitoring. This is something very important, because if at one point you do a recovery task in Ops Manager or Azure Monitor and you reboot the machine, of course, it will have an impact in Azure Monitor as well. So the first one is dual homed agents. The second one, connected management groups. You can actually connect your management group to Azure Monitor. The benefits there are you don't have to multi-home all agents. It's instant sharing of data. Downsides are that you can't use the Microsoft monitoring agent. There's no segregation of data, and the VM insights only possible with direct connection to Azure Monitor. Opening up capabilities to send data simultaneously. But again, you don't have the possibility to segregate data, and you can't use the Microsoft monitoring agent because it's done on a lower level. So to be honest, I'm not using this that much because it's giving away all control regarding what's implemented or what's injected or not. Now it becomes interesting because this is the new kid on the block. New, it has been around for a couple of years. And it's the SCOM managed instances, or SCOM MI. So the managed instances, just to have, let's say, a quick roundup, because I can do a session on managed instances for specifically on that. It has the same footprint, so everything can be transferred. So if you have a SCOM managed instance, you can actually transfer your management packs, and you can actually see it as infrastructure as a service. So SCOM will be hosted in Azure, and you have the possibility to actually remove the SCOM infrastructure components on-prem if you are in the phase of going into the managed instances. But before that, you can actually multi-home your old management group or your on-premise management group and your SCOM managed instance. You can multi-home the agents until you see that it's far enough that it's working, and then you can start decommissioning your environment on-prem and start from there. The cool thing is that the learning curve here is almost zero because you're still using the same console, you're still using the same user experience, you're still using the same agents, you're still using the same management packs. It's just that you transfer your SQL DBase, your management, your SQL DBase, your management service and everything into the cloud and work from there, which is pretty cool. So if you want to transition into the cloud and have SCOM also deeply integrated with Azure Monitor, and you don't have the possibility, or you don't want to proceed with the possibility to connect on-prem to Azure, you just need to crack the agents to your Azure SCOM management instance and work from there. One of the cool things I always introduce if SCOM management instances is not possible is the Azure Management Pack. I've seen in the community that and even in the environments, that not a lot of people are aware that the Azure Management Pack has evolved into such a great tool, because it creates the visibility for your Azure resources without changing the backend, meaning that you can actually get your Azure resources and do some tasks and get some monitoring on Azure resources in your SCOM environment. So if you still have a huge on-premise footprint and they walk into your office and they say, okay, we need to start monitoring a couple of things that are now evolved or installed into the Azure environment, use the Azure resources or the Azure Management Pack to actually detect those resources, get them into your environment and monitor them like an on-prem resource. Of course, sometimes there is some extra config per resource type involved, so read up on the manuals. And if you want to roll back, you just delete the Azure Management Pack in your SCOM environment, and you can actually have your clean SCOM environment again. You don't have to do the integrations and whatever. This is actually a good approach if you're not ready to migrate away from SCOM, but someone comes into your office to say, okay, you need to do this, solve this. Before the Azure Management Pack, it was I created integrations with running into event viewers and whatever, because there was no direct integration. So this is your bridge between the SCOM on-prem environment and your Azure environment. So I'm coming on my, let's say, designated time marker. The key takeaways are quite simple, but again, still relevant, like SCOM. So my final thoughts on SCOM role in the future, or present and future, that's maybe a better thing. it's always cool to see a tool evolving with time. SCOM is evolving. Some call it a dinosaur. Some say it's very heavy and it's not not ready for the hybrid environment. But I beg to believe that it's different. It's not obsolete. It's evolving. If you want a really snappy, sassy tool to actually monitor all your environments in Azure with full-blown CI/CD. Scroll back to the other slide, you can actually see that SCOM is probably not the tool for you, but it's still 100% relevant if you have large enterprises, if you have large on-prem or even less large or smaller on-prem footprints, it's still relevant there. And again, it made a huge leap forward into having a hybrid monitoring strategy, meaning don't try to keep SCOM on an island, get another tool in for your cloud environments, and then try to get them work together. It's working, but if you look at the hybrid monitoring strategies or the hybrid monitoring capabilities of SCOM, sometimes, or most of the times, you will find a solution where you can just stay in one tool and don't have the hassle or the bother of trying to get two tools working together. I mean, if you try to get a huge square and push it through a round hole, the squares will fall off. So you need to make sure that you have the right tool for the right job. And of course, in the beginning, Azure Monitor sometimes was seen as the replacement of SCOM, and an unpopular view or opinion, it can replace SCOM if you just have really small scenarios on your on-prem. But I think the power is, in fact, that you consider combining SCOM with Azure Monitor. And last but not least, plan your migration of integration roadmap wisely. Again, if you have a hybrid environment or your environment is becoming hybrid, make sure that you migrate or integrate your roadmap wisely, that you know where things are going. SCOM is not updated every week or something, so it's a very solid product. It's moving forward, and there are a lot of, let's say, things you can do. There's still a huge community like these events. So again, make sure that you have that roadmap correct. That sums up everything for me today. I hope you had some insights. Again, if you scroll to the second slide, I think my email is on there. So if you have questions or suggestions or whatever, feel free to reach out. And I hope you still have a wonderful evening or morning or afternoon where you are following this SCOMathon with the next sessions. So talk to you later. Bye.